All right, guys, this is going to be section 3 of the flip game. Last time we kind of finished up doing some animations and making him move really well. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to start building this out and making it look like a decent level. So right now, this level basically fits within the whole screen and it's very, very small for a level. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the level wider so that there's more area that our character can go. So what we're going to do is on the right in the project window, we're going to highlight level 1. That's our layout. Okay, and then on the left side, we're going to set the size. So we want to keep the height at 720 because we don't want it to scroll vertically, but we want the level to scroll horizontally. So as we move left and right, we want the level to scroll out. So we're going to take this 1280 and we're going to change it to 2400. Okay. And basically these numbers just stand for like how many pixels. So 2400 means it's 2400 pixels wide. So you can see now that I did that, I can scroll over and now all this white space has been added to the level. Okay. Now what we need to do is we're going to need to make the background longer to fill it. And if you remember, the background layer was locked. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to unlock the background layer. I'm going to click on the background object and we're going to set the background size to the size of our layout as well. So we're going to go 2400. Okay. Now you can see that after I did that, the background stretches all the way through, but because it's a tiled background, it just keeps repeating the same image. So that's the difference between a tiled background and a sprite. If this had been a sprite, so I'll use Flip as an example here, right? So Flip, if I were to like stretch him out, you see he just like stretches and gets really, really wide. So if I had made that background as a sprite, that's what that would have done. It would have stretched out the pixels and looked really funny. But because it's a tiled background, rather than actually stretching the pixels, if it runs out of image to use, it just starts repeating it again. Okay, so that works really great. Let's relock our background down. I'm going to highlight my main because we're going to be doing some stuff with that. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create more ground objects so that Flip can walk all the way to the end. Okay, because right now Flip can't go very far. Now, what we'd want to do is we would want to lay these ground objects in a really nice row. So when you copy the ground objects, there's two ways you can do it. So you can always go up here in the upper right to my project window, and all of your objects are here in the object types. So if I want another ground, I can just grab another ground and bring it in. Okay. Or if you want to directly highlight it on your layout, if you hold in control on the keyboard and you click and drag, you can basically just pull another one out. So it's like it's just reproducing, it's just making another one, right? So we could do that. Now the problem is like, even if this is just like a couple pixels too high and it's not perfectly straight, like Flip could get caught on that little crevice there. So when you're dealing with platforming and ground objects, you really want them to line up perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a grid. To set up a grid, you have to click on your layout name. So I've highlighted my level 1 layout. And then on the left side here, you'll see a box called Show Grid and Snap to Grid. So we're going to turn both of those on. So now you can see Show Grid makes the grid appear. Snap to Grid means objects are going to snap into the grid. Now the grid size, we're basically going to set it to the size of the ground platform so that it will fit in there perfectly. So our ground platform size is 572 by 60. So if I just do 572, comma 60, and I press enter, okay, the grid lines up perfectly. Okay, so now what'll happen is you can see I can drag this and it's just going to snap right into that. So now that's going to fit perfect. This is going to fit perfect. Now this is also why on the ground object we had set the origin to bottom left, because now the origin is going to tuck right down into the bottom corner of the grid, and that's what's going to make it fit perfectly. So now I'm going to highlight, hold control, just keep dragging these across. Okay, now there's this little hole here at the end. It's okay to have things go outside of the layout. So I'm just going to drag another ground, and that is perfectly fine that that's extending out. That's not really going to hurt anything. Okay, so that's what you want to do. Now, if you wanted to like leave a hole somewhere, you could, that, Flip could fall and die. If you wanted to make that part of your level design, you could do that. Okay, now you're going to see a problem here when I run the game. So I'm going to run it, and you're going to see here that, make this a little bit bigger. As Flip moves, the screen doesn't move with him. So they're like Flip is running around on the right side, but I can't see what's going on. So in order to fix that, we need to give Flip a behavior. So you're going to click on Flip, and then on the left side, we're going to go to behaviors. We're going to add a new behavior, and there's a behavior down here that's called scroll to. What that means is the screen will scroll to that character. Now, scroll to is a behavior you have to be very careful with. You really don't want to have multiple objects with scroll to on because they're going to conflict with each other. So scroll to typically is something you would just put on like your main character or a character that is being focused on in your game. So it only scrolls to that one thing. So I'm going to add scroll to flip. And now what that does is as I move, you'll see that the screen is scrolling with him. Okay. My height isn't really what I want right now. So I just got to check something. This just might be a setting on here. Yes. Um, if this unbounded scrolling is checked, you want to uncheck that. That's what was causing mine to scroll really weird. So basically, let me run it again and just make sure that this works. So that's good that that happened to me so I can explain it. Yeah, this is what we want. Okay. So now it's scrolling just how I want. I only see the level and it's moving left and right. Okay. Some people have this issue with the unbounded scrolling. By default, I don't think it's supposed to be on, but maybe they changed it, or maybe I accidentally clicked it at some point. It's very possible I accidentally clicked it. But if unbounded scrolling is on, what that means it's going to scroll and it's going to ignore the size of your layout. So basically, it was scrolling and showing me just all this empty space down here. So you typically don't want to have unbounded scrolling on because you only want to keep it within the layout. Okay, so that's what the scrolling did there. So that's all good to go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to solve another issue. Okay, so I'm going to run the game. And the issue is going to be this. What if Flip did this? So basically what happens is Flip was able to walk off the screen and now Flip fell off the screen. Now, the computer is stupid because it doesn't know what to do with Flip now. We would want to assume that he dies and it would restart the layout and all that, but those are all individual things we have to tell the computer to do. So right now, Flip actually does exist and he's just infinitely falling. And if I were to run it in debug, and maybe I'll show you that in a second, but you can see here Flip exists because now I'm holding right and I can still scroll and move to the right. Flip is just like way below the layout. So he still exists. So this is a good opportunity. Let me show you something called debug layout. So if I hit this little arrow here by the play button, I could debug it. And then when I'm on the debug, it's going to show me all this info down here at the bottom, just different things going on with the game. And on the left side here, I could click and highlight Flip. And what I can do is I can actually check like his X and Y coordinates right here at the bottom. You can see where my mouse is circling. So you'll see as Flip moves, those variables change. So you see as I move left and right, my X value is changing. So my X goes down as I move to the left, it goes up as I go to the right. My Y value, you see when Flip jumps, the Y value goes down as you get closer to the top. So my Y value is going to increase as I fall. So watch what happens when he falls off. And I'll watch this Y value right here. You can tell that Flip is just falling infinitely, 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 and he still exists. Now watch the X coordinate. I'm going to move to the right, and now my X coordinate's increasing. So I can still control Flip midair. It's just like he's falling infinitely. Okay. And then another thing we can do is, actually, I don't think we can check his animations here. Yes, we can. So look here, current animation, fall. So he's playing the fall animation. And then here where it says Flip, it says 1. So he still exists. It would track how many flips are on the screen. So this debug mode is very useful for just tracking things and understanding how the game works. All right, so we're going to solve the problem of Flip falling off. And then here's another problem too, right? So let's say I want to position Flip. Well, right now he's snapping into this weird grid that I made for the ground. So once you're done doing your ground and your platforms, you need to take that grid off. So I'm going to click on level 1 again, and I'm going to take the grid off, and I'm going to turn the snap off. Now I can freely move him around, okay? So later on is when we'll actually program him like falling off and dying. So for now, we just want to make it so he can't leave the layout. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually make like a boundary that's going to be off screen that's going to block him in. So I'm just going to double click to make a sprite. I'm going to make sure I'm on the main layer, double click and make a sprite. And then I'm going to call it boundary. I'm going to insert it and click on the screen. Now, a lot of times in programming, you're going to make objects that are like invisible or you're not going to see them. They serve a purpose that they don't need to be seen. So you don't have to like upload a sprite. You just take this little paint bucket here and I'm just going to give it a color. So I'll make my boundary green. Now, when you do if you're following the presentation on this, they tell you to make this a specific size, but that's not really that necessary. So here's my boundary. Okay. And we just want to give it a behavior to block flip. So that behavior is going to be solid. So I'm going to add a behavior to my boundary. So I just highlighted it, click behavior on the left here, and it's solid. Okay. Now, if Flip were to run into this, I'll just put on screen, you'll see that he gets blocked. He can't go through it, right? So then we simply just need to put it on the outside of the layout. And just so you guys know, you can press Control minus or Control plus to zoom in and out. Okay, so I could like really zoom out on this. And now I'm going to take this boundary, put it right against the edge, and I'm going to stretch it really tall. Okay. Now to be safe, you don't want to leave like a little gap in here because Flip could potentially get stuck in there. So I usually like to have it overlap just a little bit. So if we run it, okay, so this is perfect. Like I can't see it and he can't get out, right? But if you want to be really safe, like I could take this, I could drag it over just a smidge here and like have that overlap. Well, I wasn't actually highlighting it. So you could do something like this. This would be a little bit safer to make sure he can't escape. But obviously you see that like giant green line there. We won't want to see that. So what I recommend doing is if you highlight this object, you can go on the left side and there's something called initially visible right here. We can just uncheck that. And that just basically means it's going to be invisible. So I can run the game and then just Flip gets stopped here and he can't leave the layout. Okay. So whatever you're comfortable with. The other thing you can do is if you click and highlight this, you can use the arrow keys and you can just nudge the position. So I could have it so it overlaps just a teeny bit, but not a ton. And you could, it doesn't really matter how wide or how skinny this is. So like whatever you want to do, it's something the player doesn't see. So as long as it's serving its purpose and not allowing you to escape, then you're good. Now you do have to be careful up here because later on we're going to be making platforms where Flip can jump higher. You don't want a situation where the player could jump like over the top and get out. So you could either put an invisible ceiling on the top or you could just make this like ridiculously tall so that you can't get through. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy one. So I'm going to hold control and just drag it out like this. And I'm just going to put one on the other side. And since that first one already had solid, this one carries that property with it. It'll also have solid. Okay. Um, let's say you did want to put a ceiling on here. And once again, you could have grabbed it from here too, or you could control copy. Either way works. But let's say I control copy and grab another one. Whoops, I had two selected. Give me a sec here. I only have one selected. Control copy. Okay. So then all I'd have to do is I could just take this and re-stretch it to a different size. So I could just do this and then just stretch that along the top. So now I would have a ceiling and now Flip is completely boxed in. So you have to do something like that. You don't want the player to escape. So if like you turn in your game, I'm like intentionally, I'm going to try and break your game. So I'm going to try to escape. I'm going to try to do things that I'm not supposed to be able to do. And it's your job as the programmer to prevent me from doing those things. So if you have a really cleanly coded and designed layout, um, I should only be able to do what is intended. So those are types of things that I'm going to be looking out for as I'm grading. Okay. All right. So we've got the boundary on, we're blocked in. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to make some platforms. So I'm going to zoom in with Control plus, get back in here. So remember that's Control plus, Control minus. If you press Control plus and Control minus and it doesn't zoom in, you just have to like single click your layout and make sure that that area is like highlighted. And then once you've selected or clicked on that, then the Control plus and Control minus will work. All right, so I'm going to double click. I'm going to make another sprite and I'm going to call it platform. Now remember, if you forget to name it here, you would just click on the object later on and you would name it up here in the upper left in the properties. All right, so I'm going to add the platform. This is a single frame, so I'm just going to click the load box here in the upper left. And then I have to jump back in. Sorry, just take me a second here. Desktop. Yours, it should remember where you were, but since I recorded my last video, I've been in other folders, so it's not remembering it. So I have to go in and find it again. So we're going to go into game design. Oh yeah, it's under old desktop. Here. Old desktop. There we go. And then intro to game design. And then Flip assets, images. All right, and I'm going to find the platform. Sorry, that part should have gone a lot faster for you. All right, so I've got the platform in here. Now here in the upper right, I can like zoom in on this so I can really see it. The first thing we're going to address with this is just like the ground, we want the origin to be in the bottom left. So we're going to click the origin button here. Right click on the word origin, quick assign, bottom left. Okay. Then we're going to do something with the collision box. Because if you look at it, this block is actually kind of 3D, right? So right now, well, first of all, this is a really bad hitbox. So I want to, once you click on this, right click in the middle and do set to bounding box. Like I would always start with that. But you can see there's like this empty corner that Flip can collide with. Flip would be standing on the very top of this, even though this is like a 3D part that he should be kind of standing on. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the hitbox so that it only covers this front facing of it. And we're going to leave basically this top part won't have any collision box so that Flip can actually stand on it. And then the right side, we're going to remove the collision box here because that way we can place the platforms next to each other and they would be flush. We wouldn't have like this weird gap in between. So you could manually drag these corners and try to get it, but you want to be precise so that it's flat and even. So you want to make sure the X and Y values line up. So each of these corners you can click on and they'll turn yellow, and then you can manually type in the X and Y that you want. Okay. So this upper left one, the X is going to be 0 and the Y is going to be 6. Okay, we're basically dropping that line down by 6 pixels, and then that way there will be that area that Flip can overlap. So now I'm going to click on this upper right one, and it's going to be 55, and then this Y is going to be 6 here. Okay, and then we're going to do 55 here. So bottom right is going to be 5540. So that one's good. And then the bottom left is going to be 040, which it already is. So that bottom left one you don't have to change, but these outer three. So now what it is this rectangle here actually represents the solid part. And then these edges are not solid because they're just like the 3D parts that we want to overlap. Okay, so I'm going to close that down. And now that that's 3D. Now to kind of help you understand this, we're going to have to do it to the ground as well. So if you look really carefully, um, you can see Flip here, how there's like this little top area right here, and Flip is just like floating on top of it. And we actually want him to overlap this little 3D part, and he should actually be standing on this part. So we're going to do the same thing with the ground while we're doing this. And don't worry about doing all of these because they were copied from the original object. If I edit one of these collision boxes, it's going to do it for everything that's already out there. So we don't have to worry about doing this over and over and over again. Okay. So, we're going to do the same thing with the ground. And so we're going to take this top left. And so we're going to do 0.6, the same thing we did on the other one. We're just lowering it by 6 pixels. And then this other one, we're just going to take the Y and lower that by 6 pixels. So basically this top left and this top right, you just click on these and you just change the Y to 6. That's all you have to do. Okay. And these ones already line up flush on the left and right. So that's simply all we have to do. Very simple. Okay. Now you'll see it's going to be a slight difference here. We run it. Okay, so now you can see Flip is here, but now there's another issue, which is that Flip is actually behind it. If you can kind of see that, he's being overlapped. We're going to fix this later on with layers, but we're going to do something really safe just to make sure that Flip is always on top. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our event sheet really quick, ES game. We're going to add a new event, and it's going to be called an on-start of layout event. So we're going to click add event. It's going to be a system command. So system commands are just general system things that we want to do. And then there's one that's called on start of layouts. We're going to do on start. And you should be familiar with this already because you've done the brick game, the breakout and the asteroid destroyer. So I'm kind of just treating everything though like it's for total beginners. So I might be over explaining a little bit of this, but it's good, just to be refreshed on all that. So on start of layout. Okay, so here's my system on start of layout. And I'm going to add an action to that. And it's going to be for Flip. And the command is going to be move to top. And so that's just going to take his sprite and make sure that his sprite is on the top of the layer. Okay. Then what we're going to do is I really like to have my on start of layouts always at the very top. So we're going to drag the event up. Now you have to remember, I talked about this in my last video, but you don't want to click here and drag because you can see it's only highlighting the condition. So if I try to drag this, it's actually going to move it and try to make it a condition somewhere else. Okay. You don't want to click this because that's just the action. It's going to like move the action somewhere you don't want it to go. So to physically move the whole event, you have to click this far left area where the green arrow is. And not every event has a green arrow, like this one doesn't, but you would click that same area. So you click here and you can tell you did it right because the whole event, the condition and the action are highlighted. Then I grab that whole event and drag it up until I see the black line above, and now I've moved that whole event. Okay. And then also, just so you're not confused, this on landed event looks blank, but remember it had sub events. So if you see this black arrow, it just means the event can be extended out and then you can see the rest of it. Okay. All right. So now that we've done that, if I run it, it's coded now to put Flip on top. Now you see his feet are overlapping and he's on top. Now this would have gotten fixed later on anyways, because we're going to make a separate layer for the blocks basically. That's going to be underneath, but we still want to have that code because there's going to be a lot of different objects on the main layer, and Flip is our main character, so he always needs to be in front of anything on his own layer, because we always want him to be in the forefront. So that's why that piece of code is important. Okay. The last thing we're going to do in here is we're simply going to make a grid for the platforms and then just start to design out a level. Now, the platform size is 60 by 40, so you would think that our grid size would be 60 by 40. But what we're going to do is we're going to take 5 pixels off the right, and the reason why is we have a 5 pixel gap here where I want the bricks to overlap. So we're actually going to make the grid 55 by 40 so that they will overlap here and actually look a little bit better. So I'm going to click on my level 1 layout in the upper right. Grid size, I'm going to change that grid size to 55 by 40. So I'm just going to do 55 comma 40, press enter, and then I'm going to click show grid and snap to grid. Okay. So now my platform is in here and you'll see it snaps in perfect. And this is because my origin is in the bottom left. And then I can just hold control and you'll see that they'll line up like perfectly next to each other. Okay, and then basically, because this is something that a lot of people will do, that I'll see kids do the first time, is they'll have this platform, right? And they'll say, well, I want a really long one. So then they take this and they stretch it out. And you can see how terrible that looks because it's literally stretching the pixels and it's making it blurry, right? So that's why if you want a longer platform, you just copy it and then use the grid so it just snaps in next to it. And then now I've got a longer platform there. Okay. So I'm not going to sit here and like make a whole level, but then on your own, you go ahead and design this level. If you want to take a chunk of the ground out, so like I could highlight that and press delete. Now I've got a hole there, so now I simply have to go in and I have to make platforms to allow Flip to be able to traverse this area. So you decide how you want that to look, but the grid is absolutely helpful. And then once you're done with your platforms, then you're going to want to turn this grid stuff off so that it's back to normal. But when you're done, you should be able to run it. He should stand and it should look 3D. He should be blocked in. Up here, oh, you can see there's one more thing I'm missing, and you probably can already tell me what that is. I forgot to give solid behavior to the platform. So let's go ahead and do that quick. That's why it's always good to test, like after every step, just to make sure, because you maybe thought this was all good and then like way later on you realize you missed that and it can cause issues. So I'm just going to click on any one of these, click behaviors, add a new behavior, solid. Okay. But basically, if your game runs like mine is right now, then you are all caught up and good to go. All right. So that's going to be it for section 3.